Good Monday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for November the 6th. Today we are reading together a couple of chapters in Second Chronicles chapters 15 and 16. This is going to continue the retelling of the reign of King Asa, which so far has been pretty great. There's not been too many negatives under Asa. In fact, we're going to see today how there was in fact, a great spiritual revival under this particular king. So a lot of good things going on in chapter 15, but then we see in chapter 16, things seem to start slipping a bit whenever it comes to Asa. So let's read about that here. We'll read chapters 15 and 16 of Second Chronicles, beginning in Second Chronicles 1. Second Chronicles 15, verse number 1, the Spirit of God came on Azariah, son of Oded. He went out to meet Asa and said to him, Asa and all Judah and Benjamin, hear me. Yahweh is with you when you are with him. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you abandon him, he will abandon you. For many years, Israel has been without the true God, without a teaching priest, and without instruction. But when they turned to Yahweh, God of Israel, in their distress and sought him, he was found by them. In those times, there was no peace for those who went out or who went about their daily activities, because the residents of the lands had many conflicts. Nation was crushed by nation, and city by city, for God troubled them with every possible distress. But as for you, be strong. Don't give up, for your work has a reward. Verse number 8 of Second Chronicles 15, or chapter 15. When Asa heard these words in the prophecy of Azariah, son of Oded, the prophet, he took courage and removed the abhorrent idols from the whole land of Judah and Benjamin, and from all the cities he had captured in the hill country of Ephraim. He renovated the altar of Yahweh that was in front of the portico of Yahweh's temple. Then he gathered all Judah and Benjamin, as well as those from the tribes of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Simeon, who were residing among them, for they had defected to him from Israel in great numbers when they saw that Yahweh his God was with him. They were gathered in Jerusalem in the 3rd month of the 15th year of Asa's reign. At that time, they sacrificed to Yahweh 700 cattle and 7,000 sheep and goats from all the plunder they had brought. Then they entered into a covenant to seek Yahweh, God of their ancestors, with all their hearts and all their soul. Whoever would not seek Yahweh, God of Israel, would be put to death, young or old, man or woman. They took an oath to Yahweh in a loud voice, with shouting and with trumpets and with ram's horns. All Judah rejoiced over the oath, for they had sworn it wholeheartedly. They had sought him with all sincerity, and he was found by them. So Yahweh gave them rest on every side. King Asa also removed Maacah, his grandmother, from being queen mother because she had made an obscene image of Asherah. Asa chopped down her obscene image, and then crushed it and burned it in the Kidron Valley. The high places were not taken away from Israel. Nevertheless, Asa was wholeheartedly devoted his entire life. He brought his father's consecrated gifts and his own consecrated gifts into God's temple, silver, gold, and utensils. There was no war until the 35th year of Asa's reign. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, Israel's king Baasha went to war against Judah. He built Ramah in order to keep anyone from leaving or coming to King Asa of Judah. So Asa brought out the silver and gold from the treasuries of Yahweh's temple and the royal palace, and sent it to Aram's king Ben-Hadad, who lived in Damascus, saying, There's a treaty between me and you, between my father and your father. Look, I have sent you silver and gold. Go break your treaty with Israel's king Baasha, so that he will withdraw from me. Ben-Hadad listened to King Asa and sent the commanders of his armies to the cities of Israel. They attacked Ijon, Dan, Abel-Maim, and all the storage cities of Naphtali. When Baasha heard about it, he quit building Ramah and stopped his work. Then King Asa brought all Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and the timbers Baasha had built with it. Then he built Geba and Mizpah with them. At that time, the seer Hanani came to King Asa of Judah and said to him, because you depended on the king of Aram and have not depended on Yahweh your God, the army of the king of Aram has escaped from you. Were not the Cushites and Libyans a vast army with many chariots and horsemen? When you depended on Yahweh, he handed them over to you. For the eyes of Yahweh roam throughout the earth to show himself strong for those who are wholeheartedly devoted to him. You have been foolish in this matter, therefore you will have wars from now on. Asa was enraged with the seer and put him in prison because of his anger over this. And Asa mistreated many of the people at that time. Note that the events of Asa's reign from the beginning to the end are written in the books of the kings of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa developed a disease in his feet, and his disease became increasingly severe. Yet even in his disease, he didn't seek Yahweh, but only the physicians. Asa rested with his ancestors. He died in the 41st year of his reign. He was buried in his own tomb that he had made for himself in the city of David. They laid him out in a coffin that was full of spices and various mixtures of prepared ointments. Then they made a great fire in his honor. And that is 2 Chronicles chapters 15 and 16. In the previous text, in chapter 14, we saw the beginning of King Asa's reign, and it was good. It was described as a very good reign in the fact that he removed the high places, the altars, the pagan altars, the Asherah poles, so many things that had been erected to engage in paganistic worship. Asa had stopped, and he had destroyed those things. And so once we get to chapter 15, and this prophet comes to Asa, he basically just retells, listen, for a long time, Israel, God's people, have not been blessed by Yahweh because they have not sought him. For many years, Israel has been without the true God, without a teaching priest, and without instruction. Why? Because they were not seeking him. But here's the promise from God that if you seek him, he will be found by you. But the additional promise is if you abandon him, he will abandon you. So know that what you have been doing is good. You have done what is right in my sight. You have done things that are positive for the people. And so for that, your work has a reward. So once Asa hears this, he continues to make sure that he is removing the abhorrent idols that were within the land. He even renovates worship within the temple complex, the altar of Yahweh that was in front of the portico of his temple. Those who had come from other places came because they recognized that Yahweh was with Asa. And again, we know that Yahweh was with Asa because Asa showed faithfulness to him. So they're all gathered within Jerusalem. In beginning verse number 10, they have this huge sacrifice and feast, and they're able to give back to Yahweh what he had blessed them with. Remember, they had been able to plunder the people of the Cushites at the end of chapter 14. They had attacked the tents of the herdsmen and captured many sheep and camels, and then they returned to Jerusalem. Many of those things they had captured by Yahweh's provision, they are now returning back to Yahweh in this sacrificial worship. They also entered into a covenant with Yahweh, again, binding themselves to Yahweh, that they would seek him with all their heart and all their soul. And if anybody said they weren't going to do that, then they were going to be cut off from the people. They would be put to death, whether they were, there's different translations here, either young or old or insignificant or great or male or female. If you were not committed to Yahweh, the people did not want you to be a part of them because they were not going to allow the influence to be present among them. They take another oath to Yahweh in a loud voice with shouting, with trumpets, and with ram's horns. And then they rejoice over this oath because they had sworn it with all their mind. They had sought him with all their heart, and he was found by them. The very thing that Azariah had said previously, that if you seek him, he will be found by you. That very thing is recognized as being a reality within this exact same chapter. They had sought him with all their hearts, and he was found by them. So Yahweh gave them rest on every side. Yep, Asa is not content with that. He's going to continue to do everything he can to purge the land of paganism. He removes Ma'akah, his grandmother, who was in this position of queen mother among the land, just a kind of a matriarch over the land. He removes her because she had made and had seen an obscene image of the Asherah. So he chops it down, he crushes it, he burns it. Now, we are told in verse 17 that the high places were not taken away from Israel. I'm going to say that every single high place was not taken away. And yet we have this statement, which to me is difficult to understand here in verse number 17, that Asa was wholeheartedly devoted his entire life. So keep that in mind. The text tells us he was wholeheartedly devoted his entire life. And for that, there was no war. God blessed him. God blessed him with no war for the first 35 years of, until the 35th year of Asa's reign, because at that point we have Israel and King Baasha causing him trouble. And instead of Asa, though, going to Yahweh for help, for some reason, I don't understand this whatsoever, but he took the treasury from the temple and the treasury from his own palace and sent that to the Aramean king Ben-Hadad and said, "Hey, will you help me? We've got a treaty. Our fathers had a treaty. Me and you have a treaty. So break your treaty with Baasha and run him off. That way he won't cause me any trouble anymore." And Ben-Hadad acts upon that. He listens to King Asa. He attacks these cities, and Baasha backs off. He stops building. Ramah. He stopped all of his work, and King Asa was able to then step in, and he carried away the stones of Ramah, the timbers of Baasha, and he actually used these things to build Geba and Mizpah with them. And that's just so strange to me. I'm having a really hard time understanding the congruency between the fact that the text tells us that Asa was wholeheartedly devoted his entire life, and yet here in this moment, maybe the devotion was to keep out paganism. Maybe that's how this should be understood, that his devotion was against paganism. Maybe that makes sense. But if that's not the case, then again, I'm having a hard time understanding how it can be said that he was devoted his entire life, and yet here in this moment, he does not seek Yahweh, but he seeks help from a pagan king, and in fact gives the pagan king Yahweh's treasury in order to make that happen. Well, Yahweh sends Hanani, the seer, to Asa and rebukes him, because you depended on the king of Aram and have not depended on Yahweh your God. He escaped. You could have crushed him. Don't you think God could have helped you do that? I mean, look what God did in chapter 12 and verse number 3 under Rehoboam with the Cushites and Libyans. Were they not vast? Were they not a vast army? Were they not formidable foes? And yet your people handled them because they trusted in Yahweh. So why then would you change? Because when you depended on Yahweh, he handed them over to you. But you have been foolish, Hanani says. You've been foolish in this matter. Therefore, you will have wars from now on. This conflict that Yahweh could have resolved for you, because you didn't seek him, he's going to take a step back and he's going to allow you to be under conflict from now on for the rest of your life. And Asa, to his discredit, was enraged by this. He takes, his ego is bruised, and he takes Hanani, puts him in prison. He also mistreats some of the people of that time. So this is just not a good look at the end of Asa's life, and that's compounded by the fact that whenever he develops this disease in his feet, and it became really severe, he didn't seek Yahweh. That makes me think a lot of Hezekiah later on, that whenever Hezekiah is told he's going to die, he does seek Yahweh, and Yahweh gives him more years. Why didn't Asa here seek Yahweh instead of the physicians? He might have healed him. I don't know. I don't understand. I wish we had more insight into why it was that Asa had this turn of events toward the end of his life. Why in the last 5 or 6 years does Asa go from being the guy that we've seen in 14 and 15 to this guy who doesn't depend on Yahweh, who acts foolishly and seeks the help of men instead of the help of God? I don't really know. But again, it just continues this pattern that it seems to me the chronicler is really trying to impress upon the readers, that the road is very simple. You do have a dichotomy of choice. You can either trust in Yahweh, be faithful to him, rely upon him, be dependent upon him, and then be delivered in whatever way you need to be delivered, and be provided for in whatever way you need to be provided for. If you will do that, if you'll be faithful, then you'll be blessed. But for Asa here, so unfortunately, it's really a puzzling decision in my mind. Maybe you have some thoughts on that. Maybe you have some ideas. Please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. I'd love to hear some thoughts that you have on this, because I don't know the best way to understand this. But the reality again is true, is very simple. When you seek the Lord, he'll be blessed, because he says, if you seek me, you will find me. But if you abandon me, I will abandon you. Asa turned away from Yahweh, it seems. And really sad to see this be the ending of a story that's been really good for so long. At least the majority of his story is really good from what we have here within the text. But let's choose to be like younger Asa, to pursue the Lord, to depend on him, to put full faith in him, so we can be blessed, as opposed to not doing that and suffering for it. If you have any questions or comments about this text, or anything that I mentioned earlier, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. And I appreciate you taking some time to read along with me on this Monday. I do hope that you have a great rest of your Monday. May God bless you in all that you do. And we'll be back at it again tomorrow, reading from chapter 17 of 2 Chronicles, which is going to be about Jehoshaphat and a bit of his story here in 2 Chronicles 17. Take care and God bless.